Hands, he'll come around to you, and I'll help out here on the front, and we'll get some of the questions kicked off.
Okay, we got the first question right here.
How do you get the film like behind the ship when you're in space?
How do we get the film from behind the ship?
Yeah.
If we're going to take video from somewhere else at the spacecraft, let's say it's the International Space Station, we actually have another spacecraft out there. So on some of the things that you might have seen, we've had the Soyuz that has undocked from the space station, and it's looked back at the shuttle and the station. We've also had the shuttle taking pictures of the Soyuz in the station, and then of course the station takes pictures of us as we're flying around. So it's actually, that's a good question, because it's not very easy to do that, to get images of all that activity that's going on, but it's pretty neat.
Hi. Could you talk to us a little bit about your training? Like maybe just the idea of those 9 months prior to takeoff?
Yeah, the training is pretty intense. It starts out, we get assigned to a mission about 9 months before, and then we start training literally the very next day. We'll get together with our crew, and we'll start usually at about a 4-hour per day fixed training load. And we have all the other stuff that we're finishing out. We actually have other jobs that we do, and so you have to finish out those jobs. So we get about a month or so to finish that in addition to the training. And then from about 6 months in, the training ramps up to where we're scheduled for about 14 hours a day with fixed training, which doesn't take into account dealing with email and all that other stuff, you know, that you got to do. So it gets to be where you pretty much disappear from your families for about 3 months going into the flight and then while you're on the flight. So it's actually a pretty big demand on the families, you know, for they kind of get dragged into the whole thing. But our training is pretty heavy. Of course, it has to be, because we are literally getting our efficiencies down to minutes. So if we can buy a couple of minutes of efficiency, that's a couple of minutes that allows us to do something else. And when we get on orbit, we try to increase that efficiency, because if we can buy those 2 or 3 minutes, that's the 2 or 3 minutes that we have where we can look around. So the training is very intense. It's one of the more intriguing things I've ever done. Actually turns out to be a lot of fun.
Okay, question here.
How long did it take for you to become an astronaut?
Oh, there's 2 answers to that one. The first one is, which is the more literal one, is when I first reported to work, I went through basic training for a year, and then you're ready for flight assignment. But the reality is you start training your whole life. So when you're going to school now, learning math and science, you're training. And you'll continue to train as you go into your college career, whatever that is. And then if you want to be an astronaut, the one thing I recommend is be persistent, because they may tell you thanks but no thanks the first time, and they did that to me, and it actually took until the 8th time. I had to apply 8 times in a row for 8 years before I finally got an interview. And then they finally called me in, and then of course I was really shocked when I got the call to come to work, and then I got a chance to do something that I love doing every day and never felt like going to work. And if you can get a job where you can go to work every day and it doesn't seem like work, that's as good as it gets. And so I highly recommend pursuing whatever that is in your dream, in your life. Pursue that. Let me get one over here, Nick, real quick.
How scared were you on your first flight?
You know, I thought I was going to be scared, but by the time I got there, we had trained so much that for almost anything that could happen, we knew what to do. And there's only a few things that if it happened, there's nothing we could do. And it's just like being there's a chance you could be in a car wreck or a plane wreck, whatever. That's kind of how we had to look at it. There's a chance that it could be a really bad day, and that's just the way it was. So when we got there, I was expecting to be a little nervous, but I wasn't. And so when I actually went out to the pad, I thought my heart rate was going to be pretty high, thinking, we're about to go do something really dynamic. And it turns out my heart rate was actually pretty low. The other thing about it was we had literally thousands of people that were working every day, and they were working very hard to make sure everything was done exactly correctly for flying in space. Great question.
Question here.
How old were you on your first flight?
Let me do the math. Let's see, I was 44, actually 43 years old, about to turn 44 when I first. So the secret to being an astronaut isn't being a young astronaut. Actually, the youngest astronaut we ever had was 27. Most of us get into the program somewhere in their early 30s. I was a little bit late because it took me so long to get my applications and everything in. I was 40 when I became an astronaut, and then I flew when I was 43.
How Like, how does it feel when you're in zero gravity?
You can experience this. So, next time you're in a swimming pool, get up next to the edge of the pool, or you're about this far out, a couple feet away from maybe a foot and a half or so away from the edge, enough to where you can put your head in the water. Get to where the water's just below your chin, put your head in the water, lift your feet off the bottom, blow a little bit of air out to where you sink below the surface, and then reach out, put your hands on the wall, and then just push, and you'll drift away. And that's exactly what it feels like to be in space. In fact, that's how we train. We do our spacewalks in the water. And the reason we do that is we can become neutrally buoyant, where we can move around just like we will in space, in any direction you want to go. And it's essentially frictionless. It's not truly frictionless because the water still drags on you. But it's actually very much like being in space, remarkably so.
Question here?
When you go